It's probably over the last decade that my ministry has been identified more than anything else with healing our image of God and ourselves. My books, like the Ragamuffin Gospel, by the way, that's why I wear the jeans. They're ragamuffin jeans. Abba's Child, Ruthless Trust, The Wisdom of Tenderness, A Glimpse of Jesus, and others, have aimed at dispelling illusions and myths about an unreal God and helping people to experience the God of Jesus Christ. This, by the way, I believe is the main business of Christianity. It is not a matter of simply learning how to think properly about God, but of actually experiencing Him. Losing our illusions is difficult because illusions are the stuff that we live by. The Spirit of God is the great unmasker of illusions, the great destroyer of icons and idols. God's love for us is so great that He will not permit us to harbor false images, no matter how much they seem to comfort us. God strips away those falsehoods because it is better to live naked in truth than clothed in fantasy. Throughout the course of Christian history, down to the present day, there persists this chronic temptation to reduce God to a human dimension, to express Him in clear ideas. Human reason seeks to understand everything, penetrate everything, reduce everything to its own clear conceptual thought. It's a noble enterprise, but in so doing, we rob God of His otherness and confine Him to a world of our own mental limits. In the 13th century, Thomas Aquinas warned against this when he wrote, "If you comprehend God, He is not God. A comprehended God is no God at all." In the same vein today, the Zen master says, if you meet the Buddha, kill the Buddha. That is, if you think you've comprehended the Buddha, destroy your comprehension of Him. The secret of the mystery is God is always greater. No matter how great we think Him to be, God is always greater because God is God. In the most literal sense of the word, He is unique, uncreated, infinite, totally other than we are. He surpasses and transcends all human concepts, considerations, and expectations. He's beyond anything we can intellectualize or imagine. And that is why God will always be a scandal to men and women, because He cannot be comprehended by the rational, scientific, finite mind. With these brief remarks as an introduction, I invite you tonight to stretch. The key operative word in this opening presentation is stretch your mind, stretch your heart. If necessary, renounce the security of an unexamined faith. Let go of all merely human concepts of justice, mercy, love, rectitude, fair play. If necessary, let go of everything you've heard all your life about God and find your own understanding of the Holy One rooted in the gospel of Jesus Christ. What was the message of Jesus concerning God? What did He really teach? What did He really preach? And what did He really mean? Well, biblical scholars today tell us that if we want to be most confident that we are in touch with the original message of Jesus, that we should turn to His parables, quick, decisive stories that make clear the fundamental points of His teaching. For our purposes tonight, we're going to look briefly at two. First, in Matthew 20, the parable of the crazy farmer. As you recall, it's harvest time, work is plentiful, and every morning the farmer goes out to the marketplace, which is the hiring hall of his day, like manpower today, to recruit workers for his fields. Now, given the time of year and the amount of work available, one can assume at least the great Lutheran biblical scholar Joachim Jeremias says we can assume, that those who were still idle in the day with small talk at the 11th hour, 5 in the afternoon, were lazy and a shiftless bunch. Nevertheless, the farmer needed all the help he could get, so he recruits them too. We can further assume that the 11th hour workers took their time getting out to the field, shuffled around a lot, gossiped, did very little work. But at pay time, they received the full day's pay. Now, those who heard Jesus tell the story found that his ending had a sharp twist. In this familiar rabbinic parable, meaning other rabbis of Jesus' time had told a similar story, in their version, those who worked the 1 hour got the whole day's pay because they worked so hard in the 1 hour. But in the version of Jesus, the emphasis is not on the diligence of the workers, but on the gratuitous generosity of the farmer. It was a mad, crazy, insanely generous act. No farmer or businessman in the year 2006 could indulge in such reckless generosity remain in business very long. Suppose you own a company with 100 workers, and 90 of them come in and work a 40-hour week. The other 10 come in at 4 o'clock Friday afternoon, work for 1 hour, and 5 o'clock, and then at pay time, you give them all the same wage of $2,000 for their week's work. Your partners, your colleagues, even your family would say, your cheese just slid off your cracker. You're not playing with a full deck, man. That is not only crazy, that is unjust. And that's the response of the workers in Matthew 20. They go to the farmer and say, see here, this is grossly unfair. We're out there all day long in the scorching heat. Now you give these latecomers the same wage as us? That is unjust. And the farmer replies, my friends, I do you no injustice. Didn't we agree to the wage of 1 denarius, $1 a day? Take your pay and go. Am I not free to do as I like with what's my own? Or are you envious because I'm generous? I'm telling you, the last will be first, and the first last. As I travel around the United States, speaking in a wide ecumenical setting of churches, from Southern Baptist, Roman Catholic, American Baptist, Methodist, Lutheran, Episcopalian, Presbyterian, countless hundreds of evangelical churches, evangelical colleges and universities. I'm appalled by the number of American Christians who are scandalized by the generosity of God. We're in, they're out. By God, they're out. In the last play that he wrote before his death, the great French playwright Jean Arnoul describes the last judgment as he sees it. The good guys, the just, are standing before the gate of heaven. They're keyed up, bursting with impatience, here are their reserved seats. They can't wait to go marching in when suddenly a rumor starts. Look, he's going to forgive them too. What? Them? After all I've been through, they get forgiven? I can't believe it. Exasperated, they work themselves into a fury and they start cursing God. And that was the last judgment, you see. They judged themselves, excommunicated themselves. God appeared in Jesus in the form of an infinite, boundless, extravagant mercy, and they refused to acknowledge him. I want nothing to do with a heaven so very Tom, Dick, and Harry. I spurn this so-called Messiah who's letting them all off. And because they could not transcend the limitations of their own finite expectations of who the Messiah should be, they could not recognize him in Jesus. And the same theme is replayed in what the scholars call the pearl of the parables. In Luke 15, you recall, the prodigal son is off in a life of waste and wandering, boozing and womanizing, and returns home not to the expected condemnation, but to a merciful acquittal as his father goes running, stumbling, falling down the road. And when he sees his wasted son, he does not demand, "Where have you been? What have you been up to?" But he falls on his neck, he kisses him, new ring on his finger, covers with a new robe, new sandals on his feet, and says, "Kill the fatted calf, we're going to party for 14 days. Hardly an appropriate way to treat a delinquent kid. I mean, the kid was spoiled rotten in the beginning, you spoil him again, he's never going to change. That's crazy behavior. Have you ever identified with the older brother in the story? Muttering to himself, "That rat Fink didn't get back till he's good and ready. All the time I stay home, fattening his calf that my father's now going to roast for that dork." I mean, I believe being kind too, but it's off the wall. My father is wacko. At any rate, the older brother, a serious, hard-working young man, didn't like it one bit. He saw love and he grew indignant. He saw his father's indiscriminate compassion and it made him angry. If you ever have the opportunity to spend Easter in France, whether you're in a large metropolitan area like Paris, Bordeaux, Dijon, or a little village I lived in for 6 months, Saint-Rémy, in the forest of Bourgogne, on Easter morning, you'll see this one phrase written on the sides of buildings, on the backs of buses. It's in block print, it's in script, it's graffiti. But the same phrase is sung, recited, chanted in all the Christian churches. In fact, on Easter morning, when Christians pass in the street, they exchange this phrase as a greeting. L'amour de Dieu est folie. L'amour de Dieu est folie. L'amour de Dieu est folie. The love of God is folly, foolish, crazy. And Jesus is a folly that calls forth joy. In Matthew 20, the farmers of Paul, the workers who celebrated generosity. In Luke 15, the father of the prodigal is brokenhearted. The older brother won't come into the celebration. Jesus is saying that God is extravagantly loving and calls for a joyous response from us. These two parables, among others, are both a revelation of real God from Jesus Christ and a call to conversion from us. Jesus' image of God assaults our invulnerable standards of justice, mercy, love, rectitude, fair play. The very foundation of our religion are being shaken. The depraved, good-for-nothing prodigal, loved equally as his older, harder-working brother. Celebration instead of punishment. What kind of lunatic justice is this that abolishes all our sacred standards, reverses all of rank, makes the last first, the first last, and in the end, all get the same reward? I am not a universalist. I want to make that abundantly, luminously clear. Universalism is a heresy that makes the death and resurrection of Christ irrelevant. But the key operative word here tonight is stretch your mind and stretch your heart to accommodate the God bodied forth in Jesus of Nazareth. The parables of Jesus portray a God who is consistently overgenerous with his forgiveness and his